two semesters of general chemistry, 2 semesters of orgo, 2 semesters of bio, 2 semesters of physics, and then behavioral sciences, psychology, and sociology, 2 courses of English. And then it says optional biochemistry and molecular cell biology. Those are 2 that I strongly recommend. You'll probably take. I don't think that they offer them here, but strongly recommend you take them when you get to a university. Biochem is offered, yes. Excellent class to take. These are classes that it'll vary between med schools, but almost guaranteed you're going to need to take them for the MCAT because it covers all these topics. And the reason I mentioned the 2 at the bottom is like if you take biochemistry, that's kind of like all of those other classes. And then it's important to note that the 2 courses of English are there because the medical school admission test, the MCAT, has a pretty significant critical analysis section, reasoning, which is a reading component. And then I also included, there's again on the AAMC website, they break down by school. So almost guaranteed it'll never be more than this, but some schools say you can take whatever you want as they go on your MCAT. And I think that website may be $20 now, but I would say that that's excellent investment that you can make. AAMC is the place that admissions and the MCAT, so they're the experts. For information.
Ethan, do you think it can stand on this?
Yeah.
A little closer to the microphone.
What's that?
There's a microphone.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay. Okay, so this is clinical experience. We talked about at the beginning that the anatomy of an applicant thing. You're made up of your GPA and all the classes you take, as well as the MCAT, and then all the other things that make up your experiences. Clinical experience is one of those. Shadowing, I went ahead and bolded because this is priority number 1. This gives you the exposure that you need to decide that this is actually something you want to do. So shadowing usually looks like you communicate, a great place to start is your primary care physician, somebody that you already know, and you say, hey, I'd really like to meet you and observe your work, or thank you for being my doctor. I'd love to see what you do. I'm interested in medicine. Can I come shadow you? Hopefully they'll give you a good response. Sometimes they don't, but you have to cast a wide net because you really do want to get exposure to the life of a physician before you make it. A couple other options, becoming an EMT. It's kind of like an investment because you have to take the classes and all that stuff. But EMT is probably the number 1 way to get medical exposure. You're actually going to be working with people who really need your care, and you can actually get hands-on things done. A lot of people speak really highly of their time working as before applying to medical school because they feel they're already comfortable with the process of working with people and working in health. And VPCC offers that. So another option is to become a scribe. This is what I do at the Lackey Clinic. So I follow a physician around, and as I meet with patients, I just keep track of diagnoses that they make and medicines that they prescribe, labs that they order. You can go through those 2 companies right there. Those are more formal. They're paid, and you go through a training process. But then you can get into the depths of it. You can be working in an emergency room, right next to a doctor. So very good. And then hospital volunteering is just another way to be around. So volunteering, it's kind of weird to say that mandated volunteering, but I think that the reason that we talk about volunteering so much as a pre-med is because they want you to, they need to understand that you can work with people of all different backgrounds, all different socioeconomic statuses. So this is a process of ensuring that you have very diverse interaction with other people before you apply to medical school. I included a few in there. Those are just very basic examples. In case you're oh, I don't know what volunteering really consists of. So Williamsburg House of Mercy, that's they do a day shelter and also a soup kitchen. So you could volunteer at either of those. And partners as well. The Virginia Department of Health. This is an excellent one. Virginia Department of Health provides low-cost, general, basic healthcare needs to a very wide population, and you can go on clinic days or to just help out stocking and those sorts of things. But again, this is a really good place where you can ask people questions about working in health. And then Comfort Zone Camp, I included that. This is a camp that is for, you get paired up with they're ages 5 to 12 children who are dealing with grief, and then you you meet them multiple times throughout the year. This is kind of like Big Brothers Big Sisters, but like specifically like. And the reason I included it is just as an example of like volunteering can take a lot of different forms. It just shows that like you care about other people as much as you care about. That's yeah, that's so research. I'm not sure like what kinds of research you can get involved in with community college, but there's a lot of opportunities once you transfer over to a university. It was kind of like a vague like I didn't really understand what research was until I took the NAS 206 class, which I think is like required before you can get your associate in science. So medical schools, a lot of them they'll be actively involved in research, like experts in the field pursuing like new scientific knowledge. So either they're carrying out like trials or they're doing like lab research, like bench research. But it can also consist of other things, like if you're interested in the humanities, there's like literature reviews and case studies that you can do, and they're like more writing focused. But this shows that you are ambitious in your academics. It shows that you have a commitment to school. And it's not required, but if you do this before you get to medical school, it's a big way to set you up because it's likely that you're going to be researching. And especially if you're interested in like surgical specialty or actually any of the specialties, really, it can really help you match into like what you want to do by doing research in that field. This is just like early exposure. It's not required. I think we mentioned, or it was in the introduction, that I was in the cardiovascular lab at William & Mary. So I spent the summer doing research in like one of my professor's labs. I just went up to her after class one day. I was like, hey, like I'm interested in medicine as a career, and like I'm really wanting to get into research. Like, what can you tell me? And she's like, well, I have this lab. This is what we do in here. This is kind of like the commitment I expect from students. It's like twice a week for like 2 hours. You go and help with her experiments, and then like as she's doing her process of writing like her scientific articles to submit for publishing, like you kind of help with that process. She, like hopefully your professor might include you. So the MCAT, I'm studying for the MCAT right now, so I like shied away from the screen. It's like it scares me. It's kind of a beast. It's a bit of an undertaking. You don't really have to worry about it right now because you're probably, I would imagine, still taking all those introductory sciences that we talked about at the beginning. But this exam is like very intensive, 7.5 hours, and this is like a baseline. So medical schools can be like, all right, well, this school, their classes are easier, so these students have a higher GPA, or like, some sort of uneven distribution of resources there. The MCAT, on the other hand, is like an even playing field. Like everybody has to take the MCAT, no matter who you are, where you're from. So you study hard for this. You study your basic sciences. That's why it's important to pay attention now. And it comes back pretty quickly. And then also the critical analysis portion we talked about. Some basic tips. This is something you're probably going to take in like your 3rd or 4th year. Depends on when you want to apply. If you want to take gap years, you got to be mindful of like a lot of med schools only want you to have to take the last 2 years. So if you're like, I'm not going to start right away junior year, and then you realize, oh, I want to take a gap year or 2, you're not. Just hold off until you kind of know what you're doing. Takes about 4 months of studying. There's a lot of resources online you can find about this. I bought like one of the basic book sets like Kaplan or Princeton Review, and then also the AAMC, which we talked about before, offers this bundle, which includes like a ton of practice questions, also a little bit of content review, and they actually like release their old exams. So like you can go to a third party and take a bunch of practice exams there, but it's not necessarily reflected. I think that bundle is about $300, but at the same time, those are the people who released the test, so I couldn't recommend it more. And meanwhile, you could pay $1,500 if you wanted to buy a course online to study for the MCAT. So this I strongly recommend. The pre-med competencies. So this is like when we talk about holistic review. The holistic review includes all those things like the volunteering and the research. The reason they want you to do those things is so you can fill these pre-med competencies. These are competencies that the AAMC has met with medical school admissions, and they've decided what are the qualities that you're looking for in an applicant. What kind of person do you want them to be? So they have like professional qualities on there, like awareness, communication, your ability to work with other people. Basic understandings of science, so living systems, like your biology, chemistry, and human behavior, that's psychology and sociology. And then thinking and reasoning, those are writing classes. Research kind of falls into here with like inquiry, critical thinking. So this website, which is also developed by the AAMC, lists all of these competencies. And if you're ever wondering, like, so, you know, like I've done some volunteering, I've done some clinical experience, but I haven't done any research. You can always go on here and say, have I met all these competencies? Can I speak all these experiences that I've had and say, like, you know, I'm this person, I have these awarenesses because I've worked with, you know, a diverse background of people. I can prove that I'm empathetic, that I've worked with, you know, like, for example, comfort zone camp or something like that. So you don't necessarily have to like check off boxes. That's why they made this list. And this is also something to consider for like non-traditional students. So if you're not someone who's gonna like, you know, like come out of high school, do 4 years of undergraduate and then apply to medical school. So you've been working or you have a family, children, all those things. You can speak to your strengths in other ways. Like I've worked a full-time schedule and I've been a half-time student and I've done like 1 shift of volunteering every week. And that says a lot about who you are too, because the students who come out and they move off to college and the only thing that they have to worry about are their classes, they have a lot more time than you. So the competencies are there so that you can know how to speak to the things that you do and not worry about comparing yourself. Oh, and I recommend keeping a notebook. Anytime that you're doing an experience that you think might be related or something that might eventually go on your application, I would just recommend like writing briefly about it, like when it was, what you learned from it, and like maybe consider some of those competencies. What did I learn that will be applicable? The application timeline, they have this published as well. So I like pretty much this whole PowerPoint is based off like their information. But yeah, so applying to medical school takes about a year. So it starts in May. Their application, like the online called AMCAS, opens and you can start filling stuff out. So that includes the primary application essays, which are going to apply to like every school. Personal statement, you can fill out all the activities and experiences you have. You can upload all your classes. You have to do like every single class, how many credits it was, what grade you got. And then also like order your transcript. So that all happens in May. And then you can actually first submit it. You have like a whole month to work on it before you can submit it. And then it's a rolling application. So starting in June, all the way through like October, November, you can submit. It takes a long time because sometimes students will like take their MCAT like right before they're applying. They get their score back, that takes like a month. And they're like, wow, I really don't want to apply with this. I got to retake it. So now you're in like August or something. So it's a rolling application. But I would definitely stress get it in as early as possible because rolling means that they start accepting students as soon as they show up on their desk. So if they're accepting 130 students and the first 130 students they get in June are like the best applicants they've ever seen, then that's who they're going to admit. And it doesn't really matter that you applied in November. So definitely try to submit early. I mentioned at the bottom that this process varies. It's important to know that it takes about a year. So like November, you know, they might do it sometime in the winter or the spring. You might not get accepted until March, and then classes don't start until July. So that whole process. But it's important to keep that in mind when you're deciding, do I want to take a gap year or not? I was very like I was not going to take one, and then I started to learn about like how much stuff really goes into this process, and it's really overwhelming. And I decided I'm going to take 1 or 2. And I'm comforted by this idea that like over 60% of students take 1 or more gap years. And I think that it's actually probably gone up since then. The last statistic that I heard was like 6. So those gap years will consist of whatever you want. Usually try to make it applicable to what you want to do. So if that's like working in emergency medical services or doing research or something like that. And if there's other options too. Like if you're not happy with your GPA, you can take more classes. But yeah, they also have that website. This is like the 4-year game plan. This is like the super traditional game plan. So we talk about non-trad students, like you might not fall into these categories, but it's nothing to worry about. So those first 2 years just mostly consist of taking your science classes. You're hopefully finding somewhere that you want to go volunteer. You might not be getting involved with research yet, and that's okay. but maybe you're contacting your doctor, seeing if you can, watch them in the clinic and gain some exposure that'll help you really decide, like, wow, do I want to commit the next 10 years to them? And then, so after your second year, if you're here at VPCC, you might transfer to a 4-year university, and that would be a great time to start getting involved with research. To take classes that you're really interested in and just go ahead and engage in those, because like we said, any major works. So take your science classes those first 2 years, start getting into, if you're interested in religion or whatever classes that you want to take. And then also start considering, like, who might I ask to write a recommendation for me? So I think I plug about this. Yeah, there it is. So getting to know your professors, I recommend that all throughout all 4 years, because your professors are like your most valuable resource. So it's going to office hours, asking questions. You're like, oh, tell me about your career in this field. I bring that up to you. Say, okay, I see some similarities to what I want to do. Like, do you have any recommendations or advice? And sometimes you'll find opportunities through your professor, far more involved with the school than you are. And by talking to them, you realize that there's something involved with that. So we talk about getting to know your professors, getting to know the people that you're employed by, whoever runs your volunteer work. And that way, when the time comes, you can ask for recommendations. Senior year traditionally is like, you would apply, if you didn't want to take any gap years, you'd apply at the end of your junior year. Because like we said, it takes a whole year to get that process done. So that's your senior year, and then you can go straight. I don't necessarily recommend it, but if you're like the best student, or if you're like a really stellar student, really great at your time management, that might be the option. But then otherwise, your 4th year, your senior year, might be taking those, those capstone courses in your degree, taking the MCAT, studying for the MCAT, and then, doing that process fast. Okay, so we talked about going over, focusing pretty hard right now on your basic sciences. So you're taking all of those, like, Gen Chems, Orgos, biology, physics, all that right now. Do your best. I know they're hard. It's a long road through all those classes, but eventually you'll come out the other side and you realize that you actually know a lot more than you thought you did. So I would say just really focus on them now. Do your best to engage with the material, and it'll come back to the MCAT. Meet with your academic advisor. This is going to help you stay on track. Like I said, it's a lot of classes to keep track of. You're like, this isn't going to line up. I'm not going to graduate in 4 years. Like, I want to major in anthropology, but I also have to take all these STEM classes. Your academic advisor may help you with things. Talk about knowing your professors. Go ahead and start shadowing, that process rolling. And as you're planning to apply to or to transfer to a university in either the next year or 2 years, I would definitely start exploring where you want to go, what universities offer a good program. I'd say most universities have a fine pre-med program, like William & Mary doesn't even have a pre-med major, and I still recommend it to people because they have really good advisors, and they have a lot of great research experiences. So start looking into what you want to study and where you want to. That's my school email. I would be more than happy to meet with anybody who has questions. I know it's like super overwhelming for now. I was very overwhelmed for like the first few years as well. And I feel like only finally now, like, I have a good understanding of what the process looks like and how it's all together. You don't have to be exactly like the next person who's applying. You want this to be your experience, speaking to your strength. All that. I learned a lot from these 2 podcasts. And that's what I'm last thing. Strongly recommend them. All Access is a med school admissions committee from Western Reserve. A very good school for living in state. Like one of the top research universities for medical school. So one of their admissions committee members hosts this podcast where he brings on students, brings on other AdCom members, he brings on physicians, and they talk about like how to get in, how to be a good student, what medicine is going to be like, what are the advantages, disadvantages of the career. And then the pre-med years is another one I recommend. So this guy, he's a He has a company called Pre-Med or like Medical School Headquarters, I think, and they have like all the MCAT prep, like they're really well rated. He's a physician himself, and he does a lot of the similar stuff like about. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, too. Since you were talking about talking to the professor, we actually have Professor Susan Martinez. He had some experience kind of similar to probably what you will be having. She's online. Do you mind that, because she has to leave very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Another meeting. I'm gonna bring her to swing. I think this, can you hear us?
Yes, hi. Hello, everybody. I want to thank you for inviting me to your session today. And I really apologize that I will have to leave in just a few moments. I have another appointment. Hey there. And I especially want to thank Ethan for his really comprehensive and well thought out presentation. It really brought me back to my point of applying to medical school and getting in. So I'll just make a few remarks. A little bit, my abbreviated story is that I started out in a community college. I got an associate in science and nursing. I became an RN. I thought that that would be my total career path. And I was a nurse for many years. Then I became interested. I wanted something more in the sense, nursing is quite enough, but I wanted something more in the sense of diagnosing. And I wanted to be the provider. And I knew I had a big fund of knowledge, having worked in emergency rooms for many years, but I wanted to be able to utilize that experience. So I thought my path would lead me to becoming a physician assistant. And I attended and graduated Duke University with both a baccalaureate in health sciences and a physician assistant, becoming a physician assistant and then getting certified. And as I worked as a PA, I thought, it's got to be me. You know, if my patients are going to call me doctor, if they want to call me doctor, I want them to call me doctor, then I need to deserve the title. So at that point, I started the road to ultimately get into medical school and graduate UNC Chapel Hill. Did my training, residency training, and was a board certified anesthesiologist. And when the time came for an early retirement, I decided I wanted to give back. So what better than to have the circle completed and come back to community colleges and give students the benefit of my education and experience. So I've been teaching at VPCC since 2009, and I teach anatomy and physiology. I made notes and comments and suggestions, and the only thing that I would add at this point, and Ethan has demonstrated the comprehensive nature to prepare to go to medical school, but not just go to medical school, to become a physician. And it takes a lot of dedication, it takes time, it takes money, and there'll be disappointments along the way, and you just have to pick yourself up and continue on. And I can speak more to the bachelor's in health science versus, getting a baccalaureate degree in chemistry, in sciences, at another time. But I would just say this is, don't forget to be a person. Don't forget your interests and your experiences, and whether you're athletic and involved in athletics, or whether you're not and you love nature, as Ethan pointed out, and going kayaking, which is one of my loves as well. But being showing the admissions and your professors that you're well-rounded, that you read other things. One of the questions during my interview for medical school would be, well, what was the last book you read? Well, tell me about that book. what do you do for stress is basically, is another question. They don't quite say it is stress, but what do you do for fun? What do you like to do to unwind? And those things are just as important because medicine's hard. It's a hard life. It's very rewarding, but it's a calling. And Ethan mentioned empathy, which I loved. You can't teach empathy. You really can't. So people that are going in it for the money, well, let me tell you, it's not always a lot of money. And what you have to do and continue to do for that money is, if it's not in your heart, then it's not going to be rewarding. So those are just a few thoughts that I wanted to leave you with, and I'm so sorry I have to leave. But I'd be happy to speak further at another time.
Thank you so much for sharing that
Thank
with
you.
us.
Of course, y'all have a good day.
Yeah, that sounds like another excellent resource. I'm really happy that she is at the community college. I would imagine, I'm can't say this for her, but she probably would love to have you reach out to her, ask any questions. And I really like the point that she made that, well, yes, this is focused on getting into medical school. I think the shadowing and kind of like doing some self-reflection about that is really like the best place to start, because it's not about getting in, it's about what do I want to do? Do I want to fill those shoes? Am I that person? Is this a career that I really want? All considerations. That's a very good point. Yes.
Laid it all out pretty well. One of the things I was thinking, the cost involved of all these levels of education. As we're kind of entering this, the baby boomers are all retiring, and the rest of us who are in the middle are expecting your generation to fill all these gaps. Have you found that, are there scholarship opportunities out there for people that want to get into the medical field?
Yeah, there's a lot of scholarships. There's certainly a lot of need-based scholarships, and then there's also like other things that you can apply to within the university. For example, like the kinesiology department at William Mary offers like 6 different scholarships or something like that, and like nobody applies to them, and they're all about like careers in medicine. So people, it seems to me that people who they have a career behind them and they understand the significance of it are quite interested in your success, and they make those resources available and they want you to use.
Just also want to bring up that since you have done some research, because getting a MD in a medical school, very often you can do research as well, is which will take longer, but your tuition is paid by the university for this 7 years. It's going to be 7 years or something, but I think it's very, very well worth the time. Once you have that the bigger title, you have more doors open.
There's a whole branch of medicine that I don't think about a whole lot because I'm not considering it for myself, but like academic medicine is where, for example, you could earn your MD, PhD, and then you can work in like a university hospital system. So like VCU has that connection, and there are physicians there who like do research while they're treating patients. Like they do simultaneously, and they still do publications. So those are people who are clinical scientists. And then there's also just you get your MD, PhD, and then not even work with patients if you decide that that's what you would prefer. And then you're a full-time scientist working in healthcare.
Why did you choose to pick this
It was actually really shallow. It was I had more credits transferred over as kinesiology to William Mary. So like I think I took like anatomy and physiology, and then I also took microbes and disease and microbiology with Dr. Song, and that transferred over as kinesiology credit. And I was like, well, I'm like on a tight timeline. I'm just gonna pick the one that I have the most credits in. But like looking back, I would say it's probably the better choice for me over biology, because it's like you're already getting exposure to healthcare and like healthcare systems, like kinesiology at William Mary, kinesiology and health sciences, and it includes whole concentrations in public health. So that's like health systems like on a broad perspective and like how we set up and, you know, like why are there disadvantages in our healthcare system? Like, why do we have like insurance, which is just like direct payments and all that kind of stuff. So that gives you a really good background. And then the other part of it is like the upper level courses in kinesiology are like taking physiology of aging right now. I'm taking physiology of obesity next semester. So like these are things that like you're gonna run into. Yeah.
Have you ever used like AI before, or you're calling, how's that like affected?
Like as a student, or I'm not really like super familiar with AI.
Or as in the field, I guess, do you think that AI could disrupt the medicine? In the future, AI will see patients instead of.
I don't know if it's gonna disrupt. I think like these things take time to get adjusted to, but there's like beginning to be like full graduate programs that you do like a 1 or 2 years before you go to medical school in like it's called personalized medicine and like engineering and personalized medicine type things. So that's like all about like new technologies, like where healthcare is going. And if you were to do something like that, you are put in a really good position for like being kind of like at the leading front of technology when you're in your career. So like I don't use it a whole lot right now, or I don't know, but I'm familiar with programs.
I have brought up last week, talking about how advanced the AI is, and then me interested in what the thoughts are, how the AI is going to affect the healthcare industry, and they were very adamant about how they basically believe that it is going to take over like a lot of it, and it's definitely going to, even if it doesn't replace like, most cases, it will definitely be present. And as a advanced form, like a lot of other jobs, like they're going to incorporate AI.
What do you think has been your most valuable?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of shadowing. Shadowing is difficult. It really helps when you know people. So I found like I've only really been able to get hours of shadowing. But working at the Lackey Clinic, volunteering over there, they're in Brooklyn, so hard to drive. That's like a free healthcare clinic, so they see patients who have no insurance. That has definitely been my. You get a new perspective, especially if you've like grown up with like a lot of access to healthcare. You start to realize that like healthcare is not unique. Why is that the case? And then also like working with physicians.
Because I also want to add that Centara Hospital, they very often they have summertime especially, they have this volunteering program. Children, they're 14 and I mean once you reach the age of 14, 14 and 15, they have the volunteering. You can you are given a few options whether
I had sinus surgery over the summer at VCU. There were, every time my doctor entered the room, there were probably 3 very young people listening to everything he said. At what stage of learning young people are they pre-med like you, or are they at a, describe how you see?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be any age, like or any point in the process. For example, if they're scribes, they're probably under. That's something that I've been interested in. I've actually applied to ChartJoy. So ChartJoy works I think at Riverside and Centera, and it's like a national organization that like trains scribes, and then you can get employed at any hospital. Like your real employer is ChartJoy. So they could be following the doctor around, keeping notes. You also have like residents, or you could have medical students who are rotating. So the medical students are like in their 3rd year, and they're just getting exposure to a bunch of different specialties. And then also like if they're really following the doctor around, they could be like a 1st or 2nd year post grad. Or a shadow even. So that would probably be an undergrad.
What medical schools do you currently?
I am looking at a bunch. I don't think I mentioned it, but I think the average number of schools that an undergrad or an applicant applies to is. Yeah, so it's a lot. I've heard horror stories of people applying to 40. I'm not in that boat. I think I'm gonna look at probably like about 10. All the ones in Virginia, so that's University of Virginia has CU, Virginia Tech has a Virginia. So I'm gonna apply to all of those, and then probably other ones on the East Coast. I don't wanna be so far from my family that like.
For the medical schools, do you also offer in-state tuition versus?
It's actually a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they make a distinction. So,
Yeah, I saw VCU, I was looking at their med school, I think their in-state tuition is like 60,000 without room and board, and then it's like a lot more out of state.
It's a lot. I think that like most schools are in the range of 45 to 70 a year. So it's a lot of money. I think like even the in-state rate is pretty high. But one thing to keep in mind is that like medicine is generally speaking like a well-compensated career, and like people are usually able to pay off those loans. But yeah, it's very daunting.
Do you still live at home or do you have like a? Because I'm planning on going to like.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking about getting an apartment up there and then like going to their into my school, but then also want to like apply to like more than just VCU's med school, so.
Well, I grew up in Winsford, so I'm like a 10-minute drive from the campus. So I still live with my parents. It's a great financial decision. Sometimes you're like, oh man, I'm ready to move out. You know, with such a long haul, I think it's good to like your finances in consideration. I would say do whatever you choose, whatever works out best for you. It is expensive. I don't know what the living cost is in Richmond, but like in Williamsburg, a single is like 13, 14. So it's a lot of money.
Why
Yes.
did you choose both?
So I also had sinus surgery. I think I was 15, and which was miserable. I felt like I got punched in the face. But I was like obsessed with like the whole process. And I remember I was very excited that I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital bed, and I guess they give you like your first dose before you get in there. And I remember feeling disappointed right before I fell asleep that I didn't get to see any more of the doctor. So surgery is like my driving force. I think it's really fascinating. I remember how miserable I had been before the surgery. I had like a chronic sinus infection. And then like how much things change. Like wow, something so simple as like a chronic sinus infection that you might even not even see on somebody can make like a huge impact on their well-being. So I was like, that's like, I love the direct impact that you can make. I also think that being the expert, or I mean, expert might not be like the perfect word, but like being really well versed in what you do is like a service that you can do. I'm very excited to study hard so that one day I can provide the best care.
What was your? You know, you had.
There's just gonna ask you.
Mhm.
Well, how did you go about, yes, getting into that or getting into?
Yeah, they sent an email to like William Mary's like advisor. I think that you could probably just contact them and say like, hey, I saw this presentation and someone was talking about the scribing program here. I'd love to get involved. I think they're always hiring. You might even be better off doing it that way because like when they do like that big call and sending it out to all the William Mary students, people apply. They added like 10 new scribes. So you might even be better off doing it like not in September or October, like doing it a little bit later. And I think they expect, if you're planning to live in the area, I think that that clinic specifically wants like a 2-year commitment. But wherever you end up going for like university, there's always free clinics. They usually have programs like that because they rely on volunteers.
I guess I wanted to ask you, why, when you were here as a student in the science program, what kind of resources like, did you feel like, you had taken advantage of, but the other students might have thought that, can help you to get where you are?
I don't know if I'm like in like the most, I'm not saying I'm in like an advantageous space right now or anything else. But I spend a lot of time like on these podcasts. I also spend a lot of time like going to the AMC website. I think at the very beginning, I think at the beginning we talked about like some of the online sources, like US News publishes a lot of information for pre-meds. And so do like the medical schools themselves. So you can go to any medical school website, they're going to post like all about their program, their expectations, and you can start to get a feel of it. While I was at the community college, I really enjoyed anatomy and physiology. So I was like already kind of considering like how can I do more of this before, I don't want to have to wait to medical school to learn more about it. I also really enjoyed microbiology. So I guess I was like already kind of inclined towards those things, but probably the extent of it. The NAS 206 class taught me a lot about what research is, like how research is conducted, like formal like scientific research. And then I knew then when I transferred, I was like, so when I get to the university, I'm going to start looking like, am I interested in my professor's labs and classes I'm taking? If not, like I'm going to go onto the faculty website and start looking at like the research pages, see like, oh, like am I interested in like interventional radiology, or like am I interested in membrane mechanisms, in the biology department or something like that. So I knew from the NAS 206 class that I was going to be looking for research. And then universities, like if William Mary isn't a huge research university, but like they really push that you get involved with something. So there's a lot of opportunities like sent out through email. So reach out to your professors, or like, come to this like panel with like students who have done research before. They'll talk about the experience. I learned a lot that way. Yes.
If I understood you correctly, what made you choose to go there versus somewhere that did?
I just really liked William Mary. I liked small school. My other consideration was UVA, and I also looked at Virginia Tech. Both are huge research universities, but what I had heard about William and Mary was that it's like the student faculty ratio is like really small per faculty. So like, I think what the difference was, I had talked about research in his lab, like this is what I do. And he hadn't interacted with his professor in like 8 months. He was just like on his own, he was doing coding. Like, that's really not what I want. I'm looking for more of like a mentor. Because like I want to do this as part of my career. Like I was still thinking about like PhD. So I was like, I want to be like in the lab with the professor next to me, so I can ask lots of questions and gain the most from this experience. So that was like more. And then like just staying in the area. Good.
I have a question here from Professor Panky of and she's asking, she said, Dr. Marcinkus advised our students to take chemistry as a pre-course to get into the medical field. What is your advice to VPCC students with majors in the who want to get into the medical field? What courses do you think that they should get it done here?
Yeah, so like all those like careers that we talked about, like you're gonna have to get those done now. But I think the ones that are most beneficial for like exposure, like is this something I'm really interested in? Like, do I have good scientific understanding? Especially of the human body, I think it's so towards anatomy and physiology. Physiology specifically, I think, yeah, here it's integrated, right? Anatomy, phys one, anatomy, phys two. So you get both aspects at the same time. The microbiology class. Any biology class, I'd say would do it.